Hey everyone, welcome back. In this Selenium Python tutorial, we'll continue with our test automation framework discussion and we will proceed further with the next step. So the previous step, we have already externalized the launching browser and opening the travel website, which is our system under test we are assuming, right? Now the next step is basically, why do we need all of these details here, right? So why is when we, as part of the test case, we just want to provide the location where we are going from, the location where we are going to, provide the date, and then click on search button. Okay, so now from here we will be digging deeper into the page object design pattern, right? Or page object design. So what exactly is page object model? So if we simply go to this particular travel website, right? So let's say this is the website. So if we open yatra.com, the moment you will open it, there is a page that gets displayed, right? This is one of the page. Okay, and when we say page object model, it is very relative. So when you understand the website and the pages, you will be able to understand how the page object model or why it was designed the way it is. So this is one of the page. So now what is the objective behind the page object model is whatever technical components are required for any of the test automation details. So say for example, if I want to inspect this particular depart from object here or web element here on the page and then pass on certain value. So why do we need all those details? So why do we need to basically have this inspect of this particular web element in my code, right? So which is what I'm doing here at the moment, and then clicking on it and then passing the values, right? So for me as a test layer, which is more of a business layer, so there is basically concept of business layer and technical layer. So all these details that you see in your test case are the technical details. Now, when you include the technical or when you mix the technical and business together, it's basically not a very good approach. So we have to remove or we have to segregate technical and business layer. So what we'll do is we'll remove this technical part of it, and as part of the page object model, whatever web elements are there, say for example in this particular page, you are trying to test certain web elements. So you are not going to basically identify each and everything in one go. As part of the test case, say for example, I am using this one-way round trip multi-city. These are some of my test cases. So when I design the pages, I will identify all the objects of that particular page and the functions that you can perform on the page. So if you see this particular page, there are some tabs here, right? So one-way round trip multi-city. So these are the objects. So I can identify these objects, and then what actions can I perform on these objects? I can click on these, right? Then in these ones, I can click and I can send the values there. Okay. Similarly, I can click and send the values to going to. Similarly, in the departure date, I can click and send the values, right? And then on the search flights, I can click. So these are some of the actions. So identifying the web elements is first thing. Then the second thing, on that particular page, what actions can you perform? You also define that as part of the page class. Okay. And that's what page object model is. So instead of having just single class to have all the business and technical, so business is your test case, right? So when somebody writes the test cases step by step to verify something, that's the business logic that you follow to verify something. As part of the test automation script development, you implement a lot of things to achieve that business logic. So segregating that test case from the technical aspect of the test case is what we are trying to achieve as part of this framework development. And when we say page object model, this is one of the page. Okay, so in the programming, what we'll do is we'll create one Python file, create one class for this page. Once we provide the details here, the next page that appears, so if I click on search flights after providing all the details, right, it is no longer on the first page. It has moved to the next page, right? So this is separate entity, this is separate class, and then there is a connection between these pages that you have to achieve as part of the automation framework, right? So think of it as a train. So train has a driver, right? So think your WebDriver as a driver of the train. Okay, so there is just think that there is a WebDriver in the engine. All right, now how would that particular WebDriver that is there in the engine know that there are connected compartments in this particular train? Now these pages are your compartments. Okay, so that is why when we try to go ahead and implement the WebDriver, if you have seen the previous implementation here, this is, say for example, here we are defining the driver, right? So we are launching the Chrome driver, and this driver needs to identify which compartment it has to basically, or from which compartment it has to take the values, or it is connected, and that connection is what we have done from this conf test to this test search flights. So now as part of the framework development, or as part of the page object development, page object model, we will remove these, right? So we'll remove all the page related. So what all components here that you see are part of the first page. So providing the going from location is the first page, right? So if we go here, we go to yatra.com, just the home page. So depart from is the first page web element, going to is first page element, departure date is one page, and then clicking on the search flight, these all are in one page, right? So this will become a page class. All right, so in PyCharm what we'll do is we'll simply go to pages, right? And in the pages I will simply create a new Python file, and I will name it as Yatra launch page. I'm just giving the name page so that we know that these are page classes, right? Now this Yatra launch page has been created. This is one of the page. Now once a person comes here and provides all the details and clicks on search flights, it goes to the next page, right? So what will be the next page that we need to create? In the pages, we need to create another page, because this is the next page that gets launched after a person clicks on the search flights, and this page is search flights results page, right? So you can see these are two pages as of now, okay, just dummy pages. Now when we are having this particular test, right, so my test case should have only the business logic, right? So only the business details. So launching browser, this we have anyways removed, right? It is moved as part of the setup in the conf test, right? Now when somebody comes in and read this particular test case, even though they are from the business background, they should simply be able to understand what exactly this particular test case is trying to do. So we need to remove everything that is here into our launch page, whichever belongs to the launch page. So what all belongs to the launch page? These things belong to the launch page. So going from, going to, then departure date, and clicking on the search button. Okay, prior to that, let me simply cut it. Okay, so we'll simply just remove all of these. Okay, and we'll create a class, right? So first thing, so we'll create a class here. So this is my launch page, right? And we'll simply say launch page. All right, okay, and we'll define a constructor. So this is important bit. That's what I was trying to refer. Consider your WebDriver as the engine of the train. Okay, so there is a WebDriver at the engine. Now that WebDriver that is there at the engine, the engine WebDriver, engine driver basically needs to recognize that this is one of the compartments. So launch page is one of the compartment which might have certain details which that driver has to understand and link it, right? So we'll define a constructor here. So we know that there is a constructor in it, right? And in it, and as part of this constructor we'll pass the driver here. Okay, and we'll understand all of these connections very soon. And below this constructor, what we'll do is we'll say self.driver is equal to driver, because once the object of this particular class is created, then because this particular class will have these driver instances, right? So when we are identifying the objects, they need to be identified by the WebDriver, right? So they need to be recognized here, and that is why we are defining constructor here. Okay, so now I'll paste the depart from, right? Similarly, let's move to the next one, and I'll move the going to location as well. Okay, because these are all part of one page, and I'll move this sync details as well. And from the search departure, select departure date, I'll move that as well. And finally flight search, right? So clicking on the flight search. Okay, so all of that code has been moved now from this particular file, and now this is the business layer of my test case, right? So let me move these, right? So now you can see I have just comments left here, and now all my code that has the technical details has been moved to the Yatra launch page, because this is the particular page which contains all the details, right? Now I have moved it here, but this needs to go to a method, right? So we'll define a method, right? So we'll say define, we'll simply, for this particular depart, we'll create a method. So we'll say depart, let's say depart from method, and what this depart from method accepts, it accepts the depart location, right? So we'll say depart location as an argument, okay, and indent it so that it's recognized that this particular code is part of that particular method, right? So now instead of providing this location here, hard coding it, what I'll do is I'll simply say whenever somebody calls this particular method, right, so use depart location, right? Now similarly, let me quickly create methods for other fields as well, right? So going to, and then I'll remove this hard-coded value from. So these all errors will fix, all right? So don't worry about those. One by one, we'll fix all of those. This is part of that particular code as well. So in the going to, this is what the code is all about, to select the going to fields, right? Then this is to avoid the synchronization issue for selecting the date. So this is basically part of the same method, selecting date. Okay, so I'll create another method and I'll say select date and provide the date, right? So departure date, and instead of the departure date that I'm providing here, hard coding, we'll simply provide the variable and simply indent it. And the last method is clicking on the, so click set, and we do not need to provide any of the arguments here, just indent it. All right, now because we have used the expected conditions and a lot of other dependencies, if you see in this particular file here, right, so we simply need to import all of these dependencies. So now in this particular file we do not need any of these, right? So we can simply remove the unused imports from the test file, and in here if you simply keep hovering over this one, we'll simply import this by first and then keys, and now we need to import the time as well, so time from date time, right? And here we need to import the expected complete. All right, so now if we go to the test class here, right, so test search flight, in order to use the methods that we have defined here to select the date, depart from, going to, we need to create an object of this class, right, and use the methods that we had defined in this particular launch page, right? So we'll simply create an object. So we'll simply say launch page, just say LP to hold that particular, this is the variable which will hold the reference of that object. And what is the class? So the class name is launch page, right? So we'll simply say launch page, and if you hover over, you will see that we need to import, right? So import from pages Yatra launch page dot launch page. This class needs to be imported. So either you do this way, or you simply just say from pages dot Yatra launch page import. What do we need to import? We need to import this particular class, right? So either ways you can do that. And now here basically you have to provide the driver instance, right? Now because your driver, if you see that this driver, or we'll say self.driver, okay, so not the driver, self.driver. All right, so now this error will be gone. The reason is, now if we take the analogy of the train, right, so the engine is where our main driver instance is. So this is the variable which is conf_test.py, where we are using our main driver, right? Now this driver is the engine, okay, is the driver which is basically will be driving all the pages that we have, all the methods that we have. So this is what we have to change. So we have to make sure when we have this main driver, that changes to all the pages, right? So when we use this conf_test.py here in the test search flights, we use the fixture, right? And this fixture is linking the driver to this particular page, right? Now this launch page also needs to get the reference, because the driver will be launching the web browser which is in the engine. It will be launching the web browser, it will be opening the flights page, the main page, right? And now after that page is open, right, so that page, it has these details. So this is the page, launch page. Now this page, with which driver you can drive it, with the driver instance that has been invoked here, right? So this is the driver instance that has opened this particular application, right? So for this particular instance, you have to use the same driver instance to move or basically select, depart from, or going to. If you say you define a new driver instance here, then both are not linked together. So that's the whole point of it, right? So connecting the main driver with all the separate or all the pages. So whenever you are defining a framework, this is very, very important concept. So you have the main driver, and that drives the overall application. Okay, so here we are in the test, we are passing this driver, self.driver, because this is within the class, and we need to, in order to instantiate the class variable, we need to use the self.driver. Okay, and now I can simply say lp dot going from, right, so depart from, and I can provide the value. So I can say Delhi, New Delhi, and similarly going to, so I can say lp dot going to, provide the same value there, New York. And to resolve sync issues and select departure date, we have clubbed them together. And to select the departure date, we'll simply say lp dot select date, right, and as part of that date selection, I'll simply say 24th of August 2021. Now at the moment we are hard coding these values, but we will get rid of these as well as we move along. Okay, and then we want to click, right, so we simply want to click search. So now if you compare both the cases now, right, so I'll remove this one, this is not required. Okay, so here you can see that now the code looks much cleaner, and if anyone is looking at this particular code, this is the test case, they will be easily be able to understand that they are selecting on this particular page, selecting the depart from, going to, selecting the date, and clicking on the search button. Okay, so that's the whole point of this automation framework activity. It takes time, but it is worth doing it because it makes your life much easier in further automation. All right, so now let's try to execute this. So I'll copy the path and me open the new one. It looks like the path didn't copy path, absolute path, change the location to the project where our project is, and let's try to run PyTest. So it should open browser, maximized, and there is error. Okay, so launch page object has no attribute weight. Okay, I know why this issue is. So here if you see the conf test, we are returning the driver, and we are also returning the weight, right, because we have used the weight, WebDriver weight as well here as part of the setup process. So in launch page, along with the driver, we have to use the weight, we have to instantiate weight as well. So we need to simply say self.weight and then say weight. Okay, and apart from this, let me see. So one more thing, guys, here if you see that I have imported this from date time, this is not the correct one. So if I just hover import and import time, right, so time.sleep, so this is the class. Okay, so that should be pretty much it. And we have the weight, this is our conf test fixture which is returning driver and weight, and then this is the fixture that is used in the test, right, and the test is using right here. Okay, so here we are using this, we are creating an instance of the launch page, right, but the launch page, if we go now, we have to pass on the driver and the weight as well, right, so we simply say self.driver and we need to say self.weight as well. So we'll optimize this. As of now, we are just using this to segregate the code, but as we go along, we'll optimize all of this. Okay, so now it should run fine. So let's try to execute and see if the test case works as expected. So it should open the browser, and now it should type in the depart from, going to, and perform the actions accordingly. You can see it has started working as it was working previously, right? Select the departure date and then click on search flights, it will scroll to the bottom and verify the one-stop test case. It's still scrolling, selected one-stop, and then it will do the verification and close the browser, which is the teardown process. Okay, so you can see one test case has failed because the verification has failed, right? So that's the separate case, but overall our framework is now evolving, and you can see now in the test case I do not have a lot of technical jargons that should not be there in the test case, right? So test case is more of a business logic, and our pages should contain more of the technical details about the application and how to handle the web elements on the application, right? So to reiterate the page object design pattern, what I'll do is I'll open this whiteboard, right? So simply, previously what we were doing is, say for example, this is our test case. In our test case we used to have everything, right? So we used to have all of the details in the test case. So we used to have the web element, then all the logic, then verification process, weights, everything, right? Now as part of the page object, what we are trying to achieve is, so if we go to the, so this is, say for example, one page, second page, right? So this is what we are working now, and on this particular page, this is, say for example, Yatra home page. Okay, so if we simply say Yatra home page, okay, and then this is the search results page, this is search results page, right? So what we are doing here is, we are, for this particular page, instead of having everything in our test case, so our test case will now just have the business logic, right? So our test case will have only the test logic, and our setup methods, right? So setup methods basically, which is all the setup details, will be coming from the fixtures, right? So fixtures, setup and teardown, right? So once the setup happens, after setting up, so basically launching the browser, launching the application, test will start, and test will look for the relevant web elements and related methods in these pages, right? Instead of having everything in the test, they will look for it into the relevant pages, right? So say for example, at the moment I'm trying to search for depart from, going to, and selecting the date and clicking, it's coming to this particular page and selecting all those details and then clicking on the search button. Okay, now we'll again, in the further tutorial, we'll go ahead and move to the next page, right? So after clicking on this page, this page returns this particular page, right? Search results page. So there needs to be linking, and as we have understood about the linking, so driver linking, so driver understands that once you create a main, a driver, so basically a train engine, that driver needs to know how many compartments are there, right? So that driver logic basically comes to the test, checks there is a compartment from where I have to basically pick certain items, then again from this, where this compartment leads to where I have to pick certain items, and then say for example this page is moving to somewhere else. So all that linking is what we are trying to build and segregate the complexities from this business logic or the test case. Okay, so that's all for this particular tutorial. I know this was lengthy, but these concepts, once you understand in detail and you can correlate with the real examples, then it will be really easy for you to crack any interviews and absolutely build your framework in no time. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you very much for watching.